Nicola, thank you so much for having me, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anyone who's joined this session, no matter where you've dialed in from. I am speaking to you from Geneva, Switzerland, which happens to be Procter& Gamble's European headquarters and also the home of Gillette, Venus, and Braun Europe. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I want to take the opportunity to share with you the transformation that has taken place on one of our brands from a digital ecosystem standpoint. And that brand is Braun, Braun, a major appliance brand that exists all over the world, but is particularly large and meaningful here in Europe. I'm hoping that through this case study, I can share with you how the brand has transformed its business results from by being a more digitally native brand, even though it has a very non-digitally native start. But first, let me actually start by introducing you to this Braun brand itself. What are our guiding principles and values that have shaped us? It so happens that 2021 is the 100th year of the Braun business, the Braun brand in existence. It was born out of Germany here in Europe, and it's spread all over the world and is now a $1 billion+ business in itself. I'm hoping to introduce you to this brand by the small video that encapsulates what Braun stands for: to be simple, to be useful, and to make things that are built to last. Have a look at the Braun story.
In times of change, we remember what truly matters: each other. We remember that what's valuable isn't status or titles. It's the everyday things in life. At Braun, we believe in the importance of the everyday things, and we believe good design can make them happen. Because what matters isn't the complex things, it's the simple things. What matters isn't unnecessary things, it's useful things. And the things that matter aren't wasteful or disposable. They're built to last. At Braun, we've designed for what matters for 100 years. Here's to 100 more.
So it's the 100th birthday of Braun. And even though Braun may not be something you think about every day, or Braun designs might not be something you have deep dived into, actually many of the things that you use every day have been inspired by Braun design. Google Braun calculator just for fun. And then if you happen to have an Apple device, look at your calculator. It's the same calculator. Steve Jobs sent us a note while he was still running Apple that most of the inspiration he's gotten for designing the simple features of the original Apple iPhone and even the iPod were inspired by Braun. The classical prototype of a juicer mixer grinder, the classical watch that's simple and effective, the classical dry shaver that you use to groom yourself, that prototype, that shape, that way of being, that's all come over 100 years and 6 generations of Braun designers. And it's this year that we celebrate Braun. And the philosophy that we believe in, as you clearly saw, is to make things simple, useful, and built to last by designing for what matters. Right now, the major business that we are in are appliances, and the focus on making those appliances is on quality and design. Now, the consumer and whatever the consumer needs are always the starting point of any innovation we do on this business, and it is almost always based on a very simple sentence that we write on the start of all of the books that we do on Braun. Any new project, any new initiative, we start with a simple sentence: whatever we do should be useful. So we are therefore in some ways very, very focused and obsessed about solving consumer problems in real ways and ultimately enhancing the human experience. Now, today, I will focus on discussions on how Braun changed in the last 5 years. How it went from being in just electro stores like Media Mart and Best Buy, if you happen to be dialing in from the US, to how it's gone to becoming a digitally native brand that is relying tremendously on its growth online. It's even more important for Braun than many of the other brands that we sell, More than half of our total revenue, and as I said, we are over $1 billion in sales, is actually coming from online now. And each quarter, each year, the salience of our business online keeps getting higher, better, and more meaningful. But first, let me begin with a simple spoiler that you see in front of you. Our digital transformation that has impacted our business results in a way that you've never seen before didn't happen all of a sudden. Yes, Braun Europe is now the market leader. In the 5 major markets of Western Europe, it's taken leadership from challenger position, something in the work for over a decade. But this growth has not come overnight. It's meticulously planned over 10 years. So the seeds of the case that I'm about to share with you are seeds that were planted over a long period of time. I have, however, learned that there are ways to accelerate the process from seeding to full-fledged growth. I'm hoping to encapsulate that for you in a way that's palatable, digestible, reapplicable, no matter where you are on your individual digital journey, either with a client or with your own brand and business. Braun Europe has experienced pretty exceptional business momentum in the last 18 months, in particular, the period of COVID. As the world was going and facing the pandemic, our overnight success was getting even more accelerated. This past financial year was our 9th consecutive year of record-breaking growth, both offline and online, but led by online. But I want to tell you the story is less about external COVID context-triggered growth and more about consistency of business results when you have a simple framework to be digitally native, even though every single part of a digitally native ecosystem constantly changes. The grooming appliances business has historically been very predictable. It actually has a very predictable part to purchase. We, as I told you, sell mostly appliances, things that cost meaningful sums of money. This is not for 5, 10 euros or dollars. So the part in buying products in the categories we participate in almost always begins with search. Then it leads to a visit in a physical store, and then many days later, and sometimes many months later, it may lead to a purchase online or offline. So if we are selling dry shavers for 300 euros, it's not like you go and buy dry shavers on Amazon. You spend a lot of time researching, comparing, recalibrating, assessing, sometimes even visiting stores to physically see the shaver in your hand. And then you may choose to buy it there or somewhere else. But that takes time. We also tend to sell things that don't run out fast. So when you do buy something from Braun, it usually lasts at least 5 to 7 years, if not longer. So just in the pandemic, when salons and barber shops were closing down, the amount of search and interest for the categories we sell in, whether it was grooming appliances or other appliances, was going up. Consumers were searching at a faster rate, and they were doing so in numbers of the likes we've never seen before. Interestingly, not only were they buying things that we knew that they would be buying in smaller numbers before, but they also bought new jobs that they wanted to be done. Jobs such as wanting to permanently remove hair on their body or wanting to cut head hair. I'm sure all of you experienced that in the lockdown at some stage. You were wondering, how can I cut my hair? This shift was already visible in 2 weeks in the March of 2020, when the first COVID lockdown began in Europe. Our pivot, which was already in the making for a little while, accelerated even more so during this short frame of time. The framework that I want to talk to you looks at vectors of superiority. There are things that make your brand successful, viable, sustainable, and needed. Those vectors, or vectors of superiority as we call them, are product, packaging, communication, value to your seller, reseller, retailer, value to your consumer, the importance of sustainability, and of course, the importance of online salience. When all 7 vectors of superiority come together, you're able to deliver an irresistible experience to your shopper. All our vectors of superiority on the Braun business in Europe were already in a good shape until this COVID period started. But what we did in March and April and May of 2020 has now become the framework and the basis of what we'll be doing for decades to come. It wasn't really rocket science. It was taking every single vector of superiority that I've referenced to you and making it sharper, deeper, more meaningful for the shopper in a way that is sustained. We improved our products with our biggest product upgrades at the same time. We made sure that all our segments in which we participate were all available physically and mentally. And we were also making sure that any new needs that were to emerge were available to us to seed when needed. For example, women realized that they couldn't go to salons, and they also realized that while they needed hair to be removed, they were wondering, how much money does it cost to constantly keep going to salons to remove hair? We spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of euros over multiple times. Shouldn't we just look at the possibility, perhaps, of buying this so-called laser IPL devices to remove hair from the body permanently, forever, for good? So search for IPL exploded. One of the brands that were offering IPL solutions that were safe, viable, and good value was Braun. So our IPL sales went off the charts. All of this changed in hours, not days or weeks. Our entire supply plan was fully reconstructed. Our e-content was revised to be most relevant to be present and to be more meaningful against what consumers were looking for. We even engaged with our brick and mortar retail partners to step change their brick and click plans because we knew most electronic stores in Europe and the world were shut. But their business wasn't, as long as we could fulfill it online. We also made sure that our brand advertising was actually at its highest. So in COVID, with electronic shows shut down and categories generally thinking of what to do, the advertising of Braun was at its highest in 5 years. Not only was the amount of money important, but what we communicated is important, because all of this was also accompanied by superior communication. We leveraged mass media, one-on-one communication, to make sure that we leveraged the best of precision digital marketing. This is probably the heart of the case study that I want to share with you. If you were a 22-year-old male looking for a beard trimmer under 100 euros, what message would work best for you? If you were a 32-year-old woman wondering, why should you go to the salon when you can remove hair permanently using an IPL device? What would be the right message that worked for you? What barriers would you want tackled to be fully convinced to buy something that is hundreds of euros worth? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, oh, very good. So you were able to provide messaging based on audience subsets. Well done. Welcome to 2021. This is how digital works. I'm being even more specific than that. We were not designing communication for a specific large group of audiences that behaved in similar ways. We were designing communication almost by consumers, but still respecting GDPR and privacy laws. We were leveraging artificial intelligence to alter visualized communication in the way that showed up to you based on what is legally permissible to us to understand about your history. You see, we were not trying to get to superior communication in aggregate. We were trying to get to superior communication per consumer. And therein lies the magic. And we were able to quickly customize this for both efficiency and agility. This neither cost more money nor took more time. We were able to provide the strongest claims, the strongest value assessment, the best piece of communication, all of it as the consumer needed it, based on what the consumer had been searching for, and based on what that particular consumer had drifted in and out of. Like I told you, the path to purchase is long. One advantage of a long path to purchase is history. And as long as the history can be permitted legally, we were able to navigate and get to more superior communication to that sets of consumers, many of whom did behave in similar ways, in such that they were able to form clusters that were non-invasive on privacy. This communication superiority was compounded by our focus on getting the value right for our shopper, whether it was pure play or brick and click. It also helped that we were the only major appliances player not to miss supply. So as more and more consumers searched for something that we had planned to demand against in the past, the more we were able to improvise before we started on the journey earlier. Our business continued planning allowed us to be able to deliver on all the 7 vectors of superiority: product, packaging, communication, classical retail experience, online salience, consumer value, customer value, and do it in a way that is sustainable for the planet. The results that we've achieved on this business have exceeded our wildest expectations. Braun Europe has taken over market leadership in Western Europe, and we've gone from being followers to leaders in just 18 months. The reason why this has happened is because we were prepared to win in any context. When online exploded and demand for appliances and awareness and new jobs to be done within the appliances business grew, we were ready. When she wanted the IPL device and didn't want to go to salon, and she was wondering whether to buy waxes or creams or razors or epilators, we were there with precision one-to-one mass marketing, activated along this new path to purchase. That is what has allowed us to get exceptionally strong results, grow 29% in sales. In fact, what was fascinating about this case is the entire appliances business, the market grew, both online and when offline was available to open up, offline too. And both channels performed in extremely strong 20% plus growth salience. Braun led the growth. And we strongly believe that we succeed the most when the markets in which we operate succeed the most. And we competitively win some share within it. We've grown our consumer value metrics with less promotional activity and less price discounting, simply because consumers found what they were looking for at the value that made sense to them. And they were, because of the quality of the match, the value was high. As many of you know better than me, value and price can be two very separate things. You can find something of what you would call premium price, but with very good value. More of that was starting to happen through the last year and a half. Now, we are the first to admit to you that we always should operate within a price range, and pricing yourself out of the market is not good sense, no matter what the definition of value. So we were careful to be able to define that border very carefully. The last and final thing you need to know is the supply agility point was added by me because it was very important to be available in real time when people needed it. We made sure that we were ready to ship in under 2 days to people's home so that the benefit and the closure of this path to purchase happened faster than the journey leading up to it. This brings me to the 3 learnings we've had through this journey on Braun, a wonderful, well-designed brand that has gone from becoming completely not digitally native to completely digitally native. First, no matter what your business model, start by laying the foundations of a digital-first path to purchase early and often. If you don't know your consumer's digital path to purchase, there is no way that you can constantly improvise when the environment outside you changes. I'm intentionally not making this about digital tools. I'm not making this about platforms, but making it about the path to purchase itself. Once the path to purchase is clear, what happens when, why, then it becomes very easy to leverage platforms for your convenience rather than you being a slave to a particular platform, a particular algorithm, or a particular technology. Second, design an organization system that can pivot spending, platform management, creative, and support model all in real time. Our organizations actually don't have fixed jobs. They have fixed areas of mastery. They don't have a fixed work plan because we define the work plan as the total business results. And we define mastery in terms of depth by subtype. What they actually do day to day is improvise based on the reality that we see externally. Were we not organized that way, we would never have been able to improvise the way we improvised through the pandemic. Third, we need to focus on growing superiority on the 7 vectors I've mentioned. I'll repeat them again: product, packaging, communication, retailer impact, online salience, consumer value, your retailer or reseller's value, and the impact on sustainability. Once all 7 vectors of superiority come together, you know what's right for the consumer and what does the job best for him or her. And when you do that well enough, the first thing you're solving for is never price. What you're solving for is experience, design, and value. I'm not saying that these rules are the Bible. It's an example from one part of the world on one brand in one industry. But we do believe that these principles generally would stand the test of time as long as it always begins with the path to purchase, which is unique to every brand and every category. Hopefully, these three principles would help guide you through the years that would follow. While COVID might be entering a new phase of its life, volatility has not. Supply chain volatility, commodities volatility, foreign exchange volatility will go on for some time. Who knows, we may even enter a global hyperinflation environment. So the fact that things will be unpredictable will still be true. These principles could simply help you navigate that difficult prediction. Most of our business today, as I told you, is online, and we're poised to win because we were ready to define that reality. But I can tell you the total market benefited too. And I'm leveraging these principles in broad terms to make sure that we grow the 10th year, the 101st birthday of the prawn business, so that someone in the future can come back to a forum like this and talk about how Braun's growing 200 years, still making things simple, useful, and built to last. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts.
Pankaj, thank you so much for sharing your core principles, and congratulations on your success with the Braun brand. I think the early point, you really spent some time talking about the fact that Braun as a brand is about simplicity, being useful, built to last, but staying true to the North Star of whatever Braun do. It should always be useful to the consumer. So thank you so much again for those core principles. I did now want to introduce Brian Weston, EVP, Global Account Director of Grey, to the stage, who's going to moderate our audience Q&A. Welcome to the stage, Brian.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. And Pankaj, it is great to be back with you. I have to say, it's just overall, we've had some history together on another really storied brand for P&G during your time in North America. And so when I saw this opportunity to come, I could not pass it down. So it's wonderful just to see a couple of years later the success that you've brought to the European market, and the Braun story is really an amazing one. So just want to talk to you, just to have a little conversation over the next few minutes. And then anyone in the audience, if you've got any questions for Pankaj, please throw them up in the chat, and I can take those. So first off, again, yes, congratulations on the work that you've done. You mentioned some really advanced strategies and advanced targeting strategies using AI that adhere. First of all, you're being where the consumer is. You're giving them what they need, which is all sort of the principles of the Braun brand in general. So there's a really nice symmetry there. That also adhere to GDPR. I think a lot of brands, as you sort of look 2, 3, 4 years down the road, just reading the headlines, knowing consumer privacy laws are going to get even stronger. I know that first-party data is also very important, I'm sure, within the digital ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about how you're anticipating some of those changes coming in and what role that plays?
Well, first of all, Brian, it's great to see you again. We do have many adventures together, and I'm grateful for you having taken the time to conduct this Q&A. So thank you, and good to see you again. It's a very important question you've raised. I'll answer it in 3 parts, if that's okay with you. The first part is, you must have noticed that in everything I said, I was very intentional to not make it about platforms and technologies and make it about path to purchase, because path to purchase is technology and platform resistant. All we know for sure is everything's going to change. In the next 10 years, almost every eco-environment and ecosystem around us, digitally speaking, will change. But if you know how the consumer moves through the chain from search to purchase, the clearer you are, the more resilient you can be in a changing environment, even as privacy laws get stronger, and even as its compliance gets widely accepted. So that's the first thing I want to reinforce is that's the philosophy everyone can take. Most of the times we begin digital conversations about platforms, technologies, and ecosystems, and we shouldn't do that. We should start with the consumer and tell me what he or she does at the beginning, and tell me what you want her or him to do at the end, and we'll map out what's the most efficient way to bridge that gap. So that's the first thing I would say, and I'll just keep repeating that till I'm heard by everyone. The second thing you raised was making sure that in a world where GDPR and privacy became strong, especially in the European Union, what do we do with the way that we contact and leverage consumer information? And there, the idea of first-party data is very relevant. And we've sort of grown even more assertive and obsessed about first-party data. And we have a natural advantage of a superior value exchange. And that's the heart. That's the two most important words I can share about first-party data. Value exchange. If both parties are exchanging meaningful value, the first-party data capture will not only be high quality, but will be sustainable. So the value exchange on our appliances business is warranty. When you buy something for $300, and I asked you, would you fill this warranty card? Because it will allow me to service the product if something goes wrong in it. So an obligation I'm now legally have to stand by. You will fill in a high quality first-party data input back to the brand and the company. And so warranty is probably one of the strongest tools we use to get high quality first-party data that allows us to keep the value exchange at a very high level. You are guaranteed, and in many years, it goes up to 5 years. 5 years we service the product in case something happens because we're built to last. And you in return give us high quality first-party data as a consumer. So value exchange is the single most important variable to ensure the validity as the environment changes. And the third thing I would say is we've defined our ecosystem, part to purchase. We've defined our interchange, value exchange. It's also important to make sure that the brand keeps updating its superiority vectors to the new definition as laid down by the consumer based on this value exchange. The expectations are changing. So for example, if the expectation is that your products are built to last, they need to be built to last. You need to deliver superior product. But in case something happens to them, you need a superior consumer value equation, which was one of the 7 vectors, that allows you to service it and deliver back to the consumer so it survives another decade or more. So that's the way I would think of answering your question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some of the advantages. One of the other advantages I think to the consumer that P&G delivers really is, even within Braun, you've got multi-methods. But then when you expand to the other grooming brands, when it comes to Gillette and Venus, you would understand that sort of a digital path to purchase. I mean, think of all of the different tools that you can use within the P&G family for grooming. So talk to me a little bit about sort of the learnings that you've gotten on Braun and how starting to sort of apply those to some of those other brands that you also oversee.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. If you take a step back, the business I'm in is in the hair removal, hair styling, hair trimming business. You got hair on your body, you don't want it, or you want it to look different, I'm your man. As cheesy and as dangerous as that sounds. And so Gillette and Venus are 2 other brands that we retail, very successful, multi-billion-dollar brands. And we're learning that our digital nativity and our approach on Braun is very infectious and can easily be translated to the other businesses. But that would be the linear approach, right? That would be what logically would make sense. You've learned something good on one brand, it's in a similar industry as your other brands, just transfer the information. We're not doing that. What we're actually doing is not thinking brand first, but thinking job first. And because you said we are in the hair removal and hair maintenance and hair styling business, the job to be done is never defined by brand. No consumer says, I want to do this brand first. People say, I want to do this job. I want to shave. I want to remove hair permanently. I want to style my beard. I want to trim my chest hair, so on and so forth. So the way that we've translated the information across brands is job specific and not brand specific. And then it so happens that based on the strength of the technology and the ability to satisfy the consumer, we choose and present the brand that's best suited for that job. And so that's how the information is translated. It has, but not by brand, by job. And that's what makes Omni relevant, because Omni or digital ecosystems are never predefined. When you go to a physical store, there's a blades and razors section. There's a dry shavers section. But when you're searching for grooming on amazon.co.uk, it's a conglomerate of options that are brought to you because your search was broad. And most consumer search tends to be broad. So that's the way that we're thinking of cross-pollinating this information. And internally, we refer to that as the one grooming approach, because it's really about grooming through jobs framework rather than product solutions through brand framework.
No, that I think that's well said. And I think you've spoken so much about sort of how we're going to show up differently in 5 years, and how you have shown up differently from the past 5 years. And we just think the velocity of change, and you alluded to this, is going to continue to happen. Organizationally, how do you keep up? Organizationally, both sort of on the inside within P&G, and how have teams been structured differently? I assume that you can't just have the same engine and expect a completely different output. Both sort of internally and then also externally, the types of vendors that you work with, the type of external partners that you work with. How has that changed? What's the sort of learning curve on this been for you, and any advice to those who want to take those 3 steps? I know you said it's not the Bible, but as they're looking to sort of reinvent, what should they do on the inside to be able to better sort of ramp up for success?
It's a very relevant question. The first thing, as you know, Brian, and we experienced it together on Gillette as well in the US, it takes a village. So the first acknowledgement is the number of stakeholders that we would need horizontally and vertically are meaningful for the change to be for the change to feel sustained. So that's the first conversation, is just acknowledging the breadth and depth of individuals that need to be constantly evolving and learning to be able to get you to a competitive position in each generation. Successive generations of marketers and business builders will laugh at us that in the 2000s or 2010s, or sometimes even in 2020s, we have something called digital manager, search manager, and it will seem archaic very shortly down the line. It already does. So one of the things we're trying to do in building organizations and this village collective capability is to make sure that everyone is digitally fluent. And it's very difficult to be digitally fluent forever, in perpetuity, but it is possible to be digitally fluent in point in time. So we actually run programs where all our jobs are now digitally native roles. And within digitally native roles, they are at different levels of digital fluency, depending upon the impact they need to bring to the business and the brand. And each individual is expected to upgrade their digital fluency to a certain level, which are predefined and mathematically measurable, so that we are constantly evolving to the reality of the external world. For example, we went from decision-making frameworks to algorithms to artificial intelligence. Those are increasing levels of digital fluency based on increased changes in the environment. So the first thing is to acknowledge it's a village. The second thing is to develop a program that focuses on completely functionally agnostic digital fluency, where you don't have digital jobs and non-digital jobs, you just have jobs that are at different levels of digital fluency. And the third one is influencing each other externally, internally, with agency partners such as yourself and many others, to constantly push the envelope on what new pilots and experiments to run. And this is the cornerstone of A/B testing, the cornerstone of piloting, and that the digital ecosystem has gifted us as at low cost and high speeds. But we find ourselves always in a position where we're questioning each other's approach to the business model, so that the digital fluency on both sides is keeping up with each other's pace. And I'll be the first to tell you that many times it's our side, it's the P&G side that hasn't kept up with the need to pilot and learn. We are looking for preciseness in an completely imperfect world. And so we leverage external partners to make sure that that reconciliation makes sense. And the digital fluency flows both ways, not just vertically, going from a beginner to a master, but also horizontally, going from one vantage point to another vantage point. That's the way we're thinking. That's the way we're approaching it. And that approach could work for everyone. The minute you define for precision and you define for finite time units, we will struggle with surviving in this digital ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. No, it's great. And I think that it makes me think, I mean, you do talk about, I mean, we live in an increasingly complex digital ecosystem, and I think that we all hear as marketers, I think everyone, the audience here, you hear about addressable media, and you hear about performance marketing and programmatic and DCO, and then you've got lots of pilots where we're looking to do all of this. And then you think, and maybe this is the traditionalist in me thinking, so who's looking after the brand? And how does it all hold together? I mean, I think, Pankaj, some of the work that we did together, telling meaningful brand stories, was really important. How, with all of this sophistication and with all of these different pilots going on, how do you see the forest through the trees and really live the spirit of what that Braun video was about on a day-to-day basis and make sure that there's time for that?
You've raised a question, Brian, that is the source of many sleepless nights. To not lose the forest from the trees. We have gone many times to a position where the digital ecosystem is the master and not the slave. You must have noticed that when I started speaking, I started with the Braun video first. That video is new, and it has gone back in history to look at what is it that made Braun Braun, what gave us this multi-billion dollars worth of sales. And it came down to very simple things, right? Braun is simple, it's useful, and it's built to last. Those are very prophetic words if taken at seriously, which they deserve to be taken as. I think what we always tend to do in the work that we do is we always punctuate all of our work, all of our journeys with milestones. And in each of those milestones, we stop and we say, are we true to those three principles? Is this simple, useful, and built to last? And that's why it's principle-based and not platform-based. That's why it's easy to explain versus difficult to explain. That's why I didn't need a data scientist to join me, and I could speak with some reasonable level of confidence about what we had achieved, because it was simple, useful, and built to last. Keeping the North Star of your brand at the heart of every development of your digital ecosystem is critical. Otherwise, you start losing your voice, losing your authenticity. And as you know better than me, consumers are very quick to catch on to that. And the skepticism can spread quickly, thereby defeating the purpose for which you are adapting to a new ecosystem in any case. So it's the North Star. So we keep going back in history and keep reviving and reminding ourselves of why is it that we do what we do. We do things because we make them simple, useful, and built to last. And they're designed for what truly matters. That means paraphernalia doesn't work. And there are many times where we see things that are more than core, paraphernalia more than necessary. And then we remind ourselves that this is probably not the right way to approach it. So that's what keeps it at heart. Or Gillette, when you and I worked, it was always about the best a man can get. And what does each of those words mean? The best a man can get. Constantly reminding yourself would keep you on the path. And that's what we hope to do with all of our brands.
That's great. Well said. Well, Pankaj, I know you're a busy man, and I wanted to just thank you and thank Brand Innovators for bringing us back together and catching up like this. So it's been wonderful. Wish you continued success, and I'm sure our paths will cross soon.